Hey everybody, we're doing a short video series, probably 3, maybe 4 videos, where we're going to be talking about different sources of information, how people get those information sources, how they can help you learn, and just to kind of help people navigate some of the things that you come across when you're trying to teach yourself and improve your own knowledge. So we're going to be looking, or just talking briefly, so I'm going to be poking Gary with some questions about books, because everybody loves to have a bookcase full of academic texts, full of really cool looking books. One of the most popular things that PTs are doing at the moment is spending loads of money on Amazon cart shopping trips and buying loads of books and reading one a week. But you know, the biggest question is everything that we buy reliable just because it's in print?
No, I mean that is one of the problems we've got now. I think with modern publishing and what have you, anyone can go into print. You can produce an e-book for sure with the with the advent of Kindles and so on.
Yeah.
So pretty much anybody can get that type of work published, and if it gets picked up enough as an e-book, then a publisher will come along and go, we can turn that into paperback. You can actually pay to have a book put into paperback. So just because it's in print doesn't kind of give any credibility in itself. So
Yeah.
I think that's the obvious answer.
And we see that a lot with self-published celebrities.
Yeah.
Giving nutritional advice. Everyone knows my favourite one. So what's the difference then between a book, for example, like this?
Okay, so here we got
and any other book.
Report 41, which I regularly shout about. Now, it's a government publication, so straight away it's going to be a panel of experts. I guess one of the negatives of this, and it is worth highlighting, is sometimes the data in it isn't bang up to date, because obviously to produce something like a government report takes a lot of man hours, because they review all the evidence that's out there and then the panel come to an opinion. So it's reliable, it is the government guidelines, so you're always safe if you're quoting this to a client or someone like that. But there may well be more recent evidence, very current evidence that's come out, but it won't be included into. But at the end of the day, as a trainer, as a coach, if you're using data from these type of texts, you're on very solid ground, I would say, really.
So you can't really argue with that because it's put together by regulatory bodies that have, yeah?
Yeah.
Cool.
A body you can rely on.
So that's pretty safe to reference from. And if you were to use information from this, you can refer to it because it is reliably
Yeah, I mean,
put out.
referencing that is solid, really.
Cool. So, moving on from that then, what's the difference between, say, a book published like that and a textbook?
So we come on to the textbook. Now, textbook you can kind of, because it is a reference text, panel of experts again have kind of agreed the material. You'll find it heavily referenced. It will be fairly standardised and accepted as whatever the title happens to be, that area. So a textbook will be a standard text that any university will use, recognise within the university. So you're fairly safe. You can fairly much, again, you could refer to this, use it as a reference source, and it would be considered reputable information.
Yeah.
So you again, because you've got that peer review process within it, although there may be individual studies quoted, and there should be individual studies quoted quite often, you will find that it's a panel again that's agreed the content. So,
and you find with textbooks as well, I mean, this is the 11th edition.
Yeah.
So these will get updated quite regularly, and you'll see on Amazon, you'll go to buy, say this is an immunology textbook, you'll see that they might be on 14th edition by now. So the information there's reviewed.
And I think that's a good point when you are buying books on somewhere like Amazon. Check what the most recent edition is. So a classic example is Clinical Sports Nutrition. That is the handbook, if you like, for Sports Dietitians Australia. That's the reference text that's used for their course. But you are regularly getting new editions of that out. So yes, you might be able to pick it up quite cheap on Amazon, but it might be the first, second, third edition, and I think we're up to about edition 6 now. And so you must make sure, if you are going to use it as a reference text, that you've got the most recent version, to be honest.
Because people will be swayed by like a 40 quid price difference on the two. So moving on from that then, what if we go further down the chain and we go for a book like this, which is a well-referenced book. There's dozens and dozens of references and studies, quotes in there. It's written by a very reputable person who is in
Right, so I mean,
exercise nutrition.
Ron Morn, most probably, well, he is considered the grandfather of sports nutrition, or the godfather of sports nutrition, possibly as well. Mike Gleason, very well known for his kind of work in immunology. So you've got two authors there that are renowned in their field. So in terms of a hierarchy, you've kind of got that government publication, we've got our textbook, and then you've got the individual author. Now, where you've got to be careful with an individual author is, and as Rich quite rightly says, heavily referenced, so you know it's coming from a peer-reviewed kind of standing. But at the end of the day, in a book like this, the author can put their own opinion, their own slant, and nobody's really going to pull them up on it. So I think as long as you're bearing in mind that you are now getting the author's personal opinion as opposed to a panel's opinion, I think you're fairly safe ground if you know who the authors are and they come from a reputable background. Because somebody like Ron Morn, Michael Gleason, well respected in all kind of sports nutrition circles, is not going to do anything that is going to be outside the bounds of reasonable behaviour, because they've got to protect their own reputation. So they've already got an established reputation, and they're certainly not trying to enhance it just by producing a book. They produced the book to give out information.
So in contrast, that's going to be a lot more theory.
Yeah.
That might help you more with application of, because they're putting their ideas in.
And you'll most probably find this is more current,
Yes.
because this type of thing, they come out more regularly.
Yeah.
Because
I
it's
think that's a
easier to
very old
produce,
edition.
basically.
Yeah. That one's a very old edition. I think the cover of it is totally different now.
And you may find that an author like that will update it.
Yeah.
You may even get versions of the same book from the same author,
Or be active
with
online as well.
new appendix or something like that.
And those also usually quite often come with websites, which they store a lot of the updates on too.
Yeah, very often now with the newer type of book, you will get the website so as they can actually put any amendments or whatever in there to keep it keep its currency for a few years, really.
Yeah. So, what other considerations should somebody make when looking at picking up a book for reading for their own education?
I think you've got to decide what you want to get from the book. If you're trying to improve your understanding of a topic, you really want a textbook. If you want to know where the latest kind of research is sitting, something like a Ron Morn book will most probably point you in the right direction, but obviously to be most current you need to go to a peer-reviewed journal. If you just want to get the kind of latest controversy in an area, then any book that's in publication will be there, and it will kind of give you a feel for where the argument is.
Yeah.
As long as you don't base your argument on that book, I think is the one thing I would say.
Yeah, I mean,
Don't know what you feel.
it's good to be aware of what the current popular trends are,
Mm.
because that's going to help you understand what's going on in the industry. So that's good too. So basically what you're saying is be cautious when you read the books, have an open mind when you read them. If they aren't very good at referencing, checking sources, the people reading these now, if the people picking these books up are not brilliant at checking sources, checking references, because like Ron Morn will put forward an opinion and back it up. If you're not good at delving deeper into that, maybe start with the textbooks, which are very factual, until you can then sort of have more of a grasp to understand what may be true, what may
Make
be.
sure you've got a good foundation, but I do think you bring up a valid point, like about the research.
Yeah.
You'll get a lot of books have got what you would call pseudoscience. So you'll get the latest fad diet, and in there it'll be heavily referenced. It'll be this paper, that paper, and what have you. But if you were to read those individual papers and kind of cross-reference to what's being claimed, you'd find it was very different. So they may claim that if you eat this food, it causes this disease process, and they'll quote this paper. So you're thinking, at superficial level, must be true then, because they've quoted a peer-reviewed paper. If you read the paper itself, they may not have come to that conclusion. It's just they've kind of extrapolated a bit or picked on a sentence and gone, oh, well, that's what that paper says. So you can't 100% trust those type of books, that what they're quoting as a reference is what that paper said, and that's why you do need to understand how to read research papers.
So yeah, that's a good point. So when looking to learn at basic level, start off with education.
Education textbooks.
Otherwise, read for leisure. Deadpool.
Deadpool.
Comic books. So, all right, finish on something a little more controversial. What would the problem be if someone read a book like this one, Biochemical Imbalances in Disease, and they use the information from this in their practice? Now, this is quite a popular textbook in like nutritional therapy circles, nutritional medicine circles. What would be the problem? Because that's very heavily referenced. It's put together by loads of academics, a large panel of academics.
Okay, so you look at this book and you think, well, it looks quite sciencey. You can open it towards the back and you can see that all your chapters are referenced. So far you're thinking, so far so good. But I think what maybe certainly makes myself wary as a registered nutritionist, you look what it's claiming you can do by the end of time you've read this book. How biochemical imbalances are implicated in most chronic diseases, how to identify such imbalances through appropriate case history, how to distinguish between different biochemical analyses. So it's basically saying, read this book and you'll be able to do all these things. Now those first three things I've read there, to my mind, it's the area of a dietitian. And a dietitian is already trained for best part of 4 years. And I don't think they'd be comfortable in reading one book and thinking, I can now identify that. So I think that's what makes me uneasy with a book like this is, yes, it is, and there are references, but I think you'd actually need to look very closely at the individual references and see what's actually within those. Are we just getting an author's opinion, or are we getting the facts? And I'm not convinced in a book like this that you are.
See, now
I'd be wary.
My Morrison's discount voucher bookmark shows that
Giving
I'm not,
it away.
shows that I'm not very far into this book because I've had to approach every chapter and essentially every time a claim is made, look at what they're discussing, because like you said, I think even someone very advanced wouldn't necessarily want to use this and then go, okay, this is my reference book. So there's a big problem with all these very official looking books and very well written books. This is a very well written book. I'm not saying anything negative about the book itself. Who will read it, and I guess it goes to scope of practice. It's not within my scope of practice to read this and then design and implement an effective nutritional intervention looking at biochemical imbalances, diseases, and how they're implicated in chronic disease. That's risky.
Pretty much outside the scope of most people, except a dietitian, quite frankly.
But you find it very, very interesting as a read.
Well, so I think it kind of, and it does really depend on your educational background, because I think the one thing that happens as you move through kind of different levels of academia, if you like, you become more skeptical. You don't take anything at face value. You kind of just want to know where the evidence for it is.
Yeah.
And so you'd be reading that, and every kind of 4 or 5 sentences, I suspect you'd be going, how is that supported? And now I've got to go and find the reference. And actually just having the reference there is no good to me, because I need to know what that actual paper found.
Yeah, I mean there's a lot of very clinical terminology, there's a lot of very factual things that are factually correct, but any one paragraph here has got 1, 2, 3 references talking about microflora supplementation, the gut, and this is stuff that even a medical person will tell you we're not 100%
possibly on the cutting edge of science as it stands at the moment, and we're not 100% sure anyway. I think for the average trainer or the average person that just wants to improve their nutrition knowledge, stick to your textbooks, to be frank. I mean, they're big enough and complicated enough to read as it is, without getting into all the other controversies that are out there. There's probably better ways to spend your money, I would think.
Yeah, I think that book cost me more than most textbooks as well. That's good though. So hopefully that's given you a little insight into kind of like almost the hierarchy of when you're picking up books to self-educate or supplement your education, what you should be looking at, what you should maybe not necessarily avoid but be cautious of, and where you should be looking to begin with. I personally, and this is just my personal opinion, I don't think people should be picking up a book like the last one we've looked at without having picked up, I don't know, you could even start as though as an A-level biology textbook.
I think you need that foundational knowledge. I mean, even the Ron Moore and Mike Gleason book, I think for the average person would most probably be too higher level.
I mean, you can go on then from, if you're interested in the vitamins and minerals, I forgot I had this on the side. is once you've read like the textbooks, then you've got like organisations like the Royal Society of Chemistry.
Yeah, I mean,
who put out books on this is
totally reputable organisations.
Yeah. This is an entire book on vitamin C. Yeah.
And like the Nutrition Society, have published texts. So if you go onto the Nutrition Society website, they've got published texts. They've got one on sports nutrition. So you can be fairly comfortable that anything you read that's one of their published texts is going to be within the bounds of current recognised research evidence.
Well, that's good to finish on actually, because in our next video we're going to be talking about reading online, because that's a massive, people being self-educated as to what they find online, not just with textbooks. So if that has helped, if that's enraged you, drop us a comment.
Let us know.
Yeah. And we'll be happy to chat. So hopefully, these are just our opinions and based on our experience and how we would advise people. So up to you as to whether you agree with us or not. Thanks.
Let us know.